We here at Breaking Kayfabe with Bowdren Barry would like to dedicate this week's episode 176, to our good friend Kurt Koski, known to the wrestling world as Rusty Brooks. Rest well, my friend. Welcome, everybody, to episode 176 of Breaking Kayfabe, your Peabody Award-winning Breaking Kayfabe with Bowdren Barry podcast of choice. Yes, you could have listened to other podcasts, but you came here. Because why? Why, Barry? Because they love us. Am I wrong?
Jeff, they do love us. And more importantly, Jeff, we love them right back.
Amen to that, my friend. So today on this show, we are going to be talking with friend of the show, Roy Lucier, about our match of the week, which we are going down to Arena Mexico, Barry. I know that's one of your favorite buildings in the whole world. Unfortunately, after that, we're also going to be discussing the life and times of our good friend, Rusty Brooks, South Florida independent wrestling icon. I can truly say that. And we're going to be talking about Rusty and his career with our friend Bob Roop. Uncle Bob paying us a visit. Unfortunately, it's after the passing of somebody that he knew well and spent time in the Global Wrestling Federation in the late 80s down in South Florida. And we're going to be talking about the life and times of Rusty Brooks and what he meant to I want to say a whole generation of wrestling fans and aspiring wrestlers in the South Florida area. Besides that, we're going to be doing, oh, Barry, I've got an F, marry, or kill. That's a tough one for Barry Rose to muddle through. And we have just one, not three, just one Florida man or not that I will present to Barry. How about them apples, mister?
Wow. I'm ready to go, Jeff. This sounds like an action-packed episode.
Okay, before we get started, I have a story right out of the pages of South Florida, Barry. So, Barry, the other day, I'm scrolling through Facebook, and lo and behold, I come across this story from NBC6 down in South Florida about this restaurant being apparently a front for a pretty major-sized drug dealer. And then, lo and behold, it turned out it was a restaurant that my wife and I used to go to on a regular basis. I sent you the link, I think. Yeah, the old people in Chi-Town, Italian beef and hot dogs, apparently running a fentanyl distributing business. Wow, crazy fucking story, Barry.
So they aren't just selling weed out of it; they're selling fucking fentanyl out of this store. Like, they decided to go 0 to 60, like that's hardcore. But here's the crazy thing: you've talked actually on air. You have talked about your trips to this restaurant and getting the Italian beef and the dogs or the sausages. That's crazy. So is the place completely shut down now? Well,
let's just put it this way. I talked to your close personal friend, the Punisher Tom Nash, who was a regular attendee there, who told me this story. So he says he calls there the other night. This was the night before the story broke, and he was going to pick up a couple of hot dogs. He was going to get one for his mom because, of course, they're from Chicago. And, you know, the people from Chicago are very particular about their hot dogs and what's on it and stuff. And so he calls and says, yeah, I'd like to get an order of hot dogs to go. I'll pick them up in a few minutes. And so he says, the lady that answers the phone says, well, if you could give us a call back tomorrow because we're sort of in the middle of a family emergency. And he says he hears sirens going in the background. So when I posted the story on Facebook, he says, I guess I'm going to have to find another place to get hot dogs from because apparently they're not going to be reopening anytime soon. And he says, yeah, family emergency, I guess so. And he had said that he had gone in there recently a few times and had noticed he was kind of surprised that there was literally nobody in there when he would go in there. And he goes, I figured, it's maybe COVID related or something like that. People just aren't going out. But apparently there may have been more to it than that. But that was a crazy, crazy situation. And, that's the place, my wife and I are planning eventually to go back to South Florida to see friends and stuff and maybe go to a couple different restaurants that we used to like to go to. And that was one of the places we were planning on going to. Not so quick, So what can I say? So on a slightly more serious note, Bear, we unfortunately learned this week of the passing of our good friend Dave Flaherty's mom, Charlene. I talked to Dave on a semi-regular basis, and I know that Dave's mom had been in poor health She'd been in a assisted living facility, I believe, for quite a while. And, you're sorry for Dave and you're sorry for the loss of his mom. But at the same time, it's one of those things where you wonder if, the person is finally at peace now because of, the many health problems that she was having. And so we want to send our thoughts out to Dave, for the loss of his mom, Charlene.
Yeah, it's very sad. And Dave reached out to us too, a few months back, and kind of just clued us in that his mother was, I think she was in hospice, if I'm correct, and she had been really ill. So I reached out to Dave. I haven't heard anything. I don't think he's been on social media, obviously doing the right thing and trying to deal with this. And, Dave's one of us, Jeff, love him or whatever it is. Dave Flaherty is absolutely one of us. He's like family. So our deepest condolences. And, it takes strength to get through something like this. Yeah.
And so Dave, we want you to know, buddy, that we and the guys in our group are definitely thinking of you and your loss of your mom. And we hope you hang in there. And when the time is right, you will come back to the group and let us know that you're okay. Okay, Barry, it is time once again. I'm going to surprise you as it's time to play America's favorite game. Oh, yes, it's F, Marry, or Kill. Hey, somebody reached out to me last week and said, hey, why do you call it F, Marry, or Kill if you're talking about, why don't you just say fuck, marry, or kill? Because we're a classy podcast. That's why, if nothing else. So, Barry, right now, I'm going to ask you to pick up your phone. I'm going to be mailing you a picture of three. We are going to, I'm going to say mid-'80s. Okay, you ready?
Yes, sir.
I'm sending it to you now. Tell me when you receive the picture, and then I'll reveal who the three choices are.
Okay. Oh, yes. Oh,
okay.
Come on.
Okay, now this one's not fair.
No.
Okay. F, Marry, or Kill. We are going flat from Flashdance. Jennifer Beals. Ooh, so hot in that sweatshirt. The old standard bearer, Phoebe Cates from Fast Times at Ridgemont High, or from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, it's Mia Sara. Barry, who you got?
So this is a tough one. So Jennifer Beal, Jeff, you'll like this. When I was a manager, Jeff, not a server, a manager.
You were never a server, were you?
I was never a good server. That I can tell you. I was server. Yeah, you wanted to get bad service, I was your guy. But Jennifer Beals used to come in my restaurant, and she had a young daughter at the time. She was married to somebody. He was I think a director. I totally forget what his name was, but they would come in and then she would come in, and she was just naturally the most beautiful person you'd ever see. Super nice, not phony, not fake, just another person. And which really enhanced her beauty, the way that she was like that. Phoebe Cates actually owned a store, which I believe she still owns, which was about a block from the restaurant I was managing in New York. And we used to see her all the time. She was gorgeous. Unfortunately, Mia Sara, I never met. This is really a tough one. I think Mia Sara in Ferris Bueller's Day Off is arguably a 9.75, with 10 being the best. I just thought she was stunning. I don't feel, if you saw photos of her later in life, that she was able to maintain that. She cut her hair, she bleached it blonde. It didn't quite work. Boy, this is tough. I'm going to kill Mia Sara, and that's a tough one because I just thought she was just drop dead gorgeous. I'm going to F Jennifer Beals. And I think that was Ron Gamble that actually said that.
Who?
Ron.
Go ahead and ask me about Ron Gamble. Say, what about Ron Gamble?
What about Ron Gamble?
Who?
Ron Gamble, who I believe is a pastor or a priest as well.
Probably not listening to this game, but go ahead.
Right. But he is right, because we do say F, marry, or kill, and then we just say fuck the rest of the show. But Phoebe Cates, I would marry. And yes, last week you brought up maybe the greatest point in almost 4 years at this podcast is, is that what happens when you get married? You fuck up. That did not leave me. That will stay with me till the day I die. I thought that was so good. Yeah. But even if I'm not having sex with her on a frequent basis, just to be near or to look at Phoebe Cates, I'm in. So I'm marrying Phoebe Cates. I'm effing Jennifer Beals. And I hate to say it, but I am killing Mia Sara.
That's fair. I think if I was married to Phoebe Cates, what I would do is I would get myself by the pool, and I'd and this is for Harold. I'd put on the friggin' Cars, little moving in stereo, and say, okay, honey, now I want you to get out the pool. Because, oh, wow, that was such an iconic scene, and who can forget it, little moving in stereo action, and I think that might have been the most paused video scene in the history of video.
Yes, I think you're right, and it makes me wonder, does Harold Strassler incorporate all that as well? Like, loving the Cars, loving Phoebe Cates. Has he built does he have a pool? Does he put on the pirate thing? Who knows, I love Harold though. That's not a knock.
I don't want to think about Harold getting into a little pirate outfit. I got to be honest with you. So, all right, a little surprise for you now, Barry, is I'm going to throw a little Florida man or not at you.
What?
Are you ready?
I am ready. Let's do it.
Okay. A man stole an engagement ring and wedding bands from a girlfriend and used them to propose to another girlfriend, according to authorities. Deputies said Thursday they have issued an arrest warrant for Joseph Davis, 48, who had not been found as of Friday. The investigation started earlier this year when a woman told detectives she had discovered her boyfriend was actually engaged to someone else. When she looked up his fiance's Facebook page, she noticed a photo of her wearing a wedding band and engagement ring that was identical to her own from a prior marriage, the sheriff's office said in a news release. She checked her jewelry box. She found rings were missing, as were several other pieces of jewelry. Barry, Florida man or not?
Oh, so here's the sad part. I saw the headline on this story. I think it was the New York Post. It made the front cover of the New York Post as this type of story would.
Let's be honest, it's a great story.
It's a great story, but I didn't actually read it because I felt that in reading the headline, I had probably seen enough. Is it a Florida? So I definitely don't. I think you're about, and again, we don't have an official statistician to tell us where you're at, but I'm going to say you're in that 80 to 90 percentile range for being correct with your answers. I, unfortunately, am not at that same level. My numbers are much lower. I'm going to say, I'm just going to flip the coin and say, yes, this is a Florida man story.
Volusia County, Florida, probably in the Daytona area. So
wow.
You are correct on that, my friend.
Nice.
Now, Barry, it's time for us to discuss our match of the week. And as I mentioned at the end of last episode, we are going down to Mexico, where you had such a good time when you went to Arena Mexico. So, Barry, here's what we got. We got a Mexican match, the trios match from June 12th, 1996. Who can we have on that knows a little bit about Mexico? Barry, who you got? Who you think?
Oh, well, there's this guy that lives about 6 hours away from Los Angeles that I think is an expert on the lucha libre style of wrestling, Jeff.
No, not Dave Meltzer. I'm talking about our old friend Roy Lucier, back for his second time with us. Roy, my man, it's a pleasure. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Can't complain. Happy, as we're recording this, happy Valentine's Day, everybody. And looking forward to, anytime I get a chance to discuss classic lucha, I always, I'll take that opportunity.
Okay. So today we're going to look at a trios match as voted on, Barry, by the readership in the group Breaking Kayfabe with Bowdren Barry. We are looking at El Dandy versus Negro Casas and Hijo Del Santo. Wow, Barry. All I can say is this might be one of the bloodiest matches I've ever seen. Literally one of the 5 bloodiest matches I've ever seen. What did you think?
Yeah, it definitely is too. And when you texted me, I guess just yesterday or the day before, and you were like, I love this match, but I got to tell you, this might be one of the most bloody matches I have ever seen. I guess I was prepared. And for me, I've seen some bloody matches in person. The Missouri Mauler versus Dusty Rhodes had a tape fist match on Miami Beach, and the Professor Peter Letterberger's photos, and it looks like somebody has just taken Mauler by his boots and dipped him in a vat of blood. But this match,
and there are people that would enjoy that. Let's be honest. But anyway,
in our group, actually, there are people that would enjoy that. Absolutely. But
so wait, before you get to your thoughts on the match, sure. We are going to hear them. Let's get a little historical context. That's what we got Roy here for. Roy, tell us what may have led up to this match, the storylines, because this is one of the rare cases where Hijo Del Santo is a heel. Am I correct?
Yes. So basically it's 96. Hogan had the big NWO turn, a few months before this. Well, CMLL figured as stale as like the Santo Casas feud was getting. I mean, they've gone to it so many times, they had to throw a little twist in, and Santo, finally agreed to turn heel. So they had a match where Santo turned on Casas in a trios match. So the feud started where Santo was the Rudo for a change, and it's just unbelievable how much heat it got, because it set Arena Mexico on fire and all the local areas around it, because the fans, felt like Santo had turned on them, on the public. So, I mean, it's very similar to everything going on with Hogan in the NWO, just down there. I mean, Santo is no doubt the biggest name, because of his father that was currently in Lucha Libre at the time. So, the two had been feuding. Santo and Casas will, feud for the rest of their life if they have the chance. And then they threw Dandy into the mix. Obviously, so many times Casas had lost his hair. So the deal is that, you have to throw a third person into this in order to really give the appearance, like, because even as smart as the public is, just everyone's agreeing like Santo will probably never lose his mask in his career. So the throwing of Dandy in there just gave the match the extra feel to it. Yeah.
So what was the storyline, other than the fact that Santo is heel, and of course he's got this legendary feud with Casas? Was there a reason other than just throwing the third guy in? Like, had something happened to Dandy with Casas or with Santo that would have made him the third component in the trios match?
Looking back, it's so long ago, I really don't remember.
Okay, no, that's fine.
I'm definitely trying to look it up right now as I type this, but as I talk. But I believe there may have been some kind of because I don't think Dandy was a heel going into the match. So, and by the way, trios is when it's a 6-man match, 3-on-3. Oh, okay. In Mexico, there's a certain name for it. They call it Triangular de Alarido, which is like a
Well, I stand corrected there. Okay,
no problem. Just for clarification.
Oh, I do appreciate it, sir. So, also explain before I throw it to Barry for his thoughts, the rules on who gets eliminated, because spoiler alert for a match that's 25 years old, what happens is Casas gets eliminated first. And then the two finalists, did they wrestle the 2 out of 3 falls, or is it 2 out of 3 falls, including the third guy?
When there's a 3-way dance in Mexico, it's 1 fall. There's no, it's not 2 out of 3 falls. So it's like, first elimination, you get out. And then from there, it's just 1 fall takes it all.
Okay. And so Casas gets eliminated. And so then it's Dandy versus Santo, and it's hair versus mask, essentially, correct?
Yes. Okay.
So
basically, it's like, Ruleta de la Muerte. It basically, whoever if you're in the match, you're agreeing that you're going to either lose your mask or your hair, whoever, is a part of that.
Okay. So now, all that being said, Barry, let's finally get to you. Tell us what you thought about this match.
Yeah, so everything that Roy just said, that's exactly what I was going to say, Jeff, word for word. It's,
why did we even have him on? That's what I want to know.
Right? Almost identical, but it is good to have a historian on to give us the context. I love the match, and what I like too, Negro Casas really kind of out of there early. And the match is really built around Santo and El Dandy. I was confused at times at who was the heel and who was the baby face. Part of it, there's a great deal here where Santo is playing chicken shit heel, and he's backing up to Dandy, and he grabs what looks to be, I guess, a bottle of beer from a vendor, and the vendor goes for Santo, like trying to take the bottle back. Which I thought was great. And then Dandy gets involved. But I really liked this match. And really what I liked about it was a couple of things. One was this was not rushed in any form. This is a match. They're giving you 30 to 40 minutes right here, easy, which is building up. And it's, building up the suspense of the match. And Santo and Dandy just really really work. Roy, was there legitimate heat between these two, or is this just really good professional wrestling where even an old salty dog like myself is kind of fooled?
Really good. Really,
Okay.
really good. So a little more, by the way, even though both Dandy and Casas were technicos, they had been in six-mans leading up to this, and like during their matches, like Casas would be holding the Rudo for something, Dandy would charge, the Rudo would move and hit Casas, and Casas believed it was on purpose. So the two had issues in the ring, and then also in some backstage skits leading up to this. So when they went into the match, while they were both technically technicos, they just had to get that the heat off of each other. So that kind of led up to the match, by the way. I just wanted to throw in there.
Yeah, which is, and I appreciate that too. I really liked a lot of it too. The one thing I really liked about this match was twice, and I guess it was kind of towards the end of the match, maybe the last 5 or 10 minutes. Santo, who is covered in blood, the white mask is, as Jeff said, the white mask is pink at this point. There's just blood everywhere. It's all over his tights, but his mask is covered. But he's got Dandy in a camel clutch, and he's pulling Dandy's hair instead of putting the arms over his knees. And I think he gets one of his arms over his knees. He decides just to pull him by his hair and pull back. What an amazing visual that is. I mean, that was just absolutely incredible. They do that again at the end of the match. But I was blown away, Jeff. This would be, Jeff, if I'm correct, which is rare, but if I'm correct, this would be the second Lucha Libre match from Mexico that we've actually reviewed.
I think you're correct, sir. I think we did the one with MS1 from 1984, Roy. I'm going to put you on the spot right there. The really bloody match from 1984 with MS1.
With Sangre Chicana?
Yes, that's what it was. That's the one where the lady comes and dips her handkerchief in the blood at ringside. And let me just say, one of the things that I loved about this, and when I reached out to Roy, I said I was looking for some different matches to look at, and I said I want to see a match. First of all, it's a good match that the crowd's really into, that's got a certain amount of spectacle to it. And holy shit, the crowd in this match creates the spectacle because they are so emotionally, involved in this match. And maybe it's the fact that Santo is the heel here. I don't know. Or I'm not sure if Dandy was that beloved, but especially when he hits the gusher and it starts getting all over Santo and all over that, that legendary silver mask and his tights and stuff like that, the crowd just starts going bananas. I mean, Barry, am I completely off base there?
No, you're actually, Jeff, you are 100% correct.
A side story, by the way, that I'm just hearing about is you got to remember when Conan took all those AAA wrestlers to WCW, El Dandy is a CMLL wrestler, so he's not a part of that crew. Well, somehow this match specifically led to legit heat between Casas and Dandy. Like, Casas believed that Dandy was trying to quote unquote steal the spotlight or just really take his spot at that point. So a few months after this, Dandy started feeling like Casas was trying to push him out of the promotion. So Dandy reached out to one of the wrestlers that was a part of the WCW raid, and Conan ended up getting Dandy into WCW 5 months after this match, by the way.
Roy always giving us that hot Mexican gossip from 25 years ago, Barry.
Which is good. That's Jeff.
Because it's gossip I didn't know.
You know what? If I wasn't part of this podcast, I'd be tuning in just to hear that kind of stuff, So yes, absolutely.
And when you listen to this podcast, we don't just stick to wrestling, Barry. Whoa. So anyway, that's my little weekly shot. But this was a match we're going to post on our Facebook group. It's definitely a spectacle match because, again, the crowd. There's one point where if I'm wrong, oh God, I'm not sure if it was Santo or Danny that gets thrown into the crowd, and there's like this lady that's like putting herself into the match, and it's just a crazy spot. and the emotion, the blood, everything makes this match, I think, a must see. Would you say, Bear?
Oh, absolutely, too. I have a question for Roy. Roy, with COVID obviously, canceling so much of professional wrestling in the U.S. Is there Lucha Libre taking place in Mexico right now?
If there is, it's very limited with a limited amount of fans, or empty arena. The problem is when, I don't want to say it's a problem, but when the virus first hit, there were a couple promotions that ran even with no fans. And you got to remember, in Mexico, they have the Boxy Lucha Commission. And even with no fans, the commission stepped in, and I believe it was IWRG that ran out of Arena Nalcapan, ended up getting their license taken away. So you really got to be careful. Now, I've seen shows that take place down there. I've seen some outdoor shows that are taking place, like, for example, today in Stanton, California, about 20 miles from Los Angeles. There's an outdoor show taking place with some local guys. There is a lucha promotion in, I believe, Laguna Hills running that's outdoor. But as far as in Mexico, nothing even close. I mean, we're getting closer. I believe the worst is behind us. Hopefully by the end of the summer, things will be back to normal. Who knows? But there ain't nothing going. There ain't nothing of the major magnitude going on. AAA is running stuff where you're inside of your car watching the event. CMLL's running empty arena, but that's pretty much everything going on.
So, that's why we have matches like this from the past that we can look at on our Facebook group. I will post a link to this match, which again was an amazing spectacle, and I can't recommend for that purpose. I can't recommend it quite highly enough. We want to thank friend of the show, Roy Lucier, for joining us here on Valentine's Day. Roy, go spend some time with your wife on Valentine's Day. What do you say, buddy?
Always.
Thanks so much for joining us, man. We appreciate it.
Anytime, buddy. Glad to be on.
So, Barry, as we mentioned at the top of the show, this week, a very sad one here for us at Breaking Kayfabe with Bowdren Barry, as we lost a guy that was friends to both of us. The wrestling world knew him as Rusty Brooks. His real name was Kurt Koski. And so we decided to reach out to someone that knew Rusty a long time ago. I want to say probably would have been in the latter part of the 80s with the Global Wrestling Federation that was based out of South Florida. And so, Barry, on this sad occasion, I wish it was a happier occasion. We're joined by the guy that we refer to as Uncle Bob. Bob Roop is here to talk about his friend, Kurt, Rusty Brooks. Bob, welcome, and we're happy to have you here on this sad occasion.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry myself that we're getting together, under these circumstances. But you know what? There's a lot of people. I'm sure there's been some wrestlers passed away that you guys have not done podcasts on because they didn't merit it, and there wasn't a lot of good things to be said, or you couldn't find people who would say good things about them. So the idea that you're honoring Rusty or Kurt, I still call Mike Brandon, Dr. Red Rob, or Dr. Michael Brandon, who's a consummate professional. I still call him Red from Red Roberts. That's how I met him, and so that's his ring name, but that's what I still call him. I call him Mike just doesn't seem right. So I still think of Rusty as Rusty because I never knew him as Kurt.
Yeah. So let me just ask you, when did you first encounter Rusty? What was your first meeting with him, if you remember?
I think I might have run into him at different places, but never long enough to really even sit down in the same dressing room until I went to work for Global, and then he was one of the talents. But he and Malenko, Larry Simon, ran our wrestling school, and I should tell you that because Dr. Red, who I just mentioned, he knew Rusty a lot better than I did. I called him. I asked him, but we text back and forth daily, and I asked him if he had time to call me, and he told me some stuff. I didn't know anything about Rusty's background. I don't know if you guys do either. But
well,
time,
I know he started off as a wrestling fan to begin with, which is I think that's always the best way to become a wrestler is to have a certain background and just as a fan of the business before you start. And other than that, please continue. I'm sorry.
well, that's fine. No, but you guys are great at extrapolating ideas and asking good questions. Otherwise, I'm sure some of your guests would, they I don't know, maybe it's hard to get wrestlers to ever run out of gas, but I learned a lot of stuff I did not have a clue about. Rusty was really a very big frog in a little pond in South Florida. He had a ring in his backyard, and he had a little school there. He trained himself, and he found people to work out with, and he got trained by somebody. I think. Let's see. I thought Barry might know.
Was Malenko, wasn't it?
What was his name? Gentleman Jim. Somebody.
Gentleman Jim Thames.
Yeah, that's I couldn't remember his last name, but he also trained Ricky Santana. So Rusty, Florida Championship Wrestling used to run at the Sunshine Musical Theater, and when they quit, Rusty, somebody, I'm not sure if Rusty was the one promoting it, but what he had done, Red said Rusty gave a lot of people an opportunity to get in the business that never would have had a chance if it hadn't been for him to be able to go to the ring in his backyard and work out and get trained. And then he tried to book them. And apparently they did some shows in the Caribbean and even did a show in Peru. And this is all stuff I didn't know until an hour and a half ago. But he helped a lot of people get started. And one of the things, I don't know, maybe you should save the best for last, but one of the things that's really, really critical, Rusty raised his children, his son, Jeff, by himself. The mom, for some reason or another, was not there. So he raised his son himself, and he raised him, he limited his own activity to do it. And he wanted to make sure his son had a good, at least one parent there for him all the time. And he got him involved in the wrestling business as, I guess, as J-Dog. And his son also had a job working in some normal pursuit. But Rusty was a good father. He was, my boys were raised, but I was Mr. Mom to them. And even though Molly was still around, she was there. I mean, not just physically, even when she was at work, she was still in the house. But until she passed away a few years ago, my boys had two parents. Now they've got one. I can really empathize with what it would have been. I just put myself in Rusty's situation. If Molly had, for some reason been gone, removed from my life, when my boys were very young, or even Ryan, my oldest boy, was very young, how difficult that would have been. And so I got to take my hat off. That's the thing that made me appreciate Rusty the most, was that he had sacrificed his own career, and because so many people didn't. I'm not going to name names, but there's guys that are now they're fading out of the sight who are very, very famous guys who were married 3 or 4 times, had 4 or 5 kids by different wives, and end up being divorced. There wasn't anything. The women, I had one of these, I'm not going to mention the name, but I had one of these guys' wives tell me, he says, I love him, but she says, he's on the road all the time. She said, I'm not going to, I can't live my life alone. So I'm divorcing him, even though I still love him. And, you get to an age where you're, all of a sudden you're no longer famous, you're wrestling, and you were famous by your wrestling persona. You're that name. I'm happy I always wrestle under my own name. But if when that persona dies or becomes irrelevant, then so do you. because you've got nothing else to fall back on. And I feel bad for guys, because it's all of a sudden they just almost disappear. So the fact that Rusty was willing to subjugate himself, and I don't know if you know this fact, any of you, but especially you, Barry, as kind of a historian. And Jeff, you might be too. I'm not sure.
Well, I was going to say.
I'm not sure if I know all your accolades. You might have been the one that trained Barry, for all I know. So maybe I'm being a real jerk here.
I'm hoping eventually he can become okay.
Yeah, I'm trying. A little bit of practice, right? That's what I got to do.
But Rusty, one of Rusty's first matches, he was calling himself Dusty Brooks.
That's right.
And he came to a match with all his ring gear on. He had a jacket and all that. And when he took it off, he on his singlet, he had Dusty Brooks. And Malenko was there. And Malenko cornered him or saw him in the dressing room or whatever. I don't think he did it right out in the ring. But he said, "Hey, man, you can't do that. Dusty's right here in Florida. He's a big star here. You can't take his name." So they changed the R. They took like the little leg off the R and pulled the stitches out and taped it or something to make it look kind of like a deformed D. And R. They changed the D around and made it look like an R. So he became Rusty Brooks. And that's how he got his name, which I didn't have a clue about any of that. But, those are little factoids that are, kind of part of the lore.
Well, one of the things that I was going to say, excuse me, Barry, was, as I started thinking about the impact that Rusty had on the South Florida wrestling scene, in a way, he reminded me of the way that people in the Northeast still talk about Dennis Carluzzo and the impact he had getting guys booked onto shows, promoting shows on a local level, and then trying to, become a little bit bigger and, maybe try to branch out when ECW was still Eastern Championship Wrestling and he was trying to get involved in that. So Rusty was very similar in a way, because if there was a show that was being booked in South Florida, I want to say about 10 years ago, there's a really, really strong chance that Rusty, if he wasn't behind the scenes setting up the matches, that he was out working one of the matches.
Yeah, that's what it became very apparent to me with Red. I've been gone from, it's amazing how the years passed, but I've been gone from down there for almost 25 years. So actually, wait a minute. 27 years. Kyle was 28. He was a year when we moved up there. So, I've been gone down there a long time. I have no idea how much activity, how active Rusty was after I left. But, again, the years go by. I guess that even when he was, kind of under the weather and not able to work, he was still working with Dave Heath. Was one of the guys in our wrestling school, and Dave Heath had like a warehouse or something that he ran shows, and Rusty would go over there and help out, would be involved. And so,
Dave Heath, known to the wrestling fans out there, Bob, is Gangrel from the WWE, and he does have his school. It's called Gangrel's Insane Asylum, I believe that's what it's called, and that's where he trains wrestlers in South Florida. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Has he done well?
Who, Dave?
Yeah.
He's had his school for, it's probably been at least 10 years by this point.
Well, I've always I liked him then. I didn't know him that well. He's one of our students. Now, I don't know if we were the very first people to train him, but we definitely were training him. And I always liked him. Thought he was a stand-up guy. And, I was glad to hear that, he went on to make a career and that he became Gangrel. And I heard that name. So, I'm happy about that. I don't know how many guys from the Global Wrestling Academy wrestling school actually went on to have a lot of success. Soulman Alex Gee was still working when I was down there a couple of years ago. We went to a match at one of the high schools or junior colleges where he was in the main event. So that was good to see. But some of the other guys, and most of them were big guys, overweight guys like me. That Alex was always slender, and he still was. Where a lot of the guys, some of the bigger guys that passed on, usually with the kind of maladies or disease that has to do with size, high blood pressure, and strokes and heart attacks and that kind of stuff. Although some of it might be genetic too, but it was nice to see some of the guys from the school make it, and so I'm happy that Dave did that.
Yeah. So, quick question, Bob. And I do remember, this is going back to what we were talking about previously, where when he did start out, he was called Dusty Brooks, and I remember the change. And I always assumed, and maybe I was correct, maybe I was incorrect, which can happen a lot, but that the Dusty Rhodes influence, that maybe Dusty had reached out and said, "Hey, there's only one Dusty. You got to become something else." Did you ever hear of anything like that, or is that just my imagination going into overdrive?
No, the first I heard, I never knew until I talked to Red today that he had called himself Dusty. It's really move to do that. I mean, especially, it's like, what you going to call yourself Andre the Giant? I mean,
right.
you don't just take somebody's name. Okay, hey, I'm famous. Look at me. I'm Dracula. Whatever. But
right.
it was just a rookie mistake. I had a guy, Buddy Landell. He never made a big career, but he worked, for a number of years. When he started, he called himself Buddy Roop.
That's
and
right.
I didn't care, but I thought, well, gee, Buddy, are you sure you want to do that? You kind of want to make your own name, but believe me, Roop is not one of the real melodious names, that use like Sterling Golden or whatever, some championship name. Roop just sort of sits there. But I had already developed. I had a persona. I thought about it the other day. The shooter thing with me was always with the boys was that because I was an amateur wrestler and I really could wrestle, but that wasn't it. The shooter thing came from, I was 26 when I broke in, and I had a college degree. I had 3 years in the military. I had 13 years of amateur wrestling and state, national, All-American, and Olympic team membership. So I was a shooter as a person, and I don't mean great. I don't mean that makes me a great person, but I mean I was developed as a person when I broke into business. So I had those things going for me. I mean, you can't do those things without some of the better and a lot of times the worst, but the better things from them working out for you. If it hadn't been for my military experience, I would have never survived Iraq. If I didn't know how to drive a 3/4 ton truck, I would have been torn apart outside the Baghdad soccer stadium by a couple thousand Iraqi people who basically tore the truck apart trying to get to me. And knives, four bullet holes in the driver's side, not holes, but pock marks in the driver's side window because it was bulletproof glass. This guy, I looked up, this guy's got a gun, a pistol pointed at me, his hand's not shaking, and none of that, I'm nervous stuff. And I'm looking down the barrel of this gun. It was a small pistol. It wasn't like a Colt 45 or anything, but it's about maybe 18 inches away. And I look up, the guy's looking right between the eyes. And what drew my attention was I heard the shot. And I look up, I turn on, trying to get the truck started. It's pretty important. There's a guy whose feet have already come through the passenger side windows. He's about to get through, kick his way through the bulletproof glass. The guy from the back, I had just broken a finger to keep him from stabbing me. So I'm trying to get the truck started. Otherwise, I'm going to die right there. And I look up, and here's this guy with the gun. I hear a shot. I look up, and there's a guy. Well, I didn't see the pockmark in the window, and I figured maybe he shot somebody else. But then he fired 3 times, and I saw the pockmarks on the window right in front of me, between me and him. He would have hit me right between the eyes, but it was bulletproof glass. So, he had a 22 or a 32. He had something small. I don't know if a 45 would have gone through it. Maybe it might have. I'm glad it wasn't. But that wasn't the time to test. I'm glad that it was a small enough caliber that it didn't. And I'm really glad that it wasn't. The bulletproof glass didn't just save me from bullets. It saved me from people being able to get through that glass and get to me, because they were pounding on it with shoes and belt buckles and boots and rifle butts, and they were pounding on the glass and they were shattering it, but it wasn't giving. It would hold together, and it gave me. I didn't have long. I only had maybe 30 seconds, but that was enough. But if I hadn't had the military training on how to start that truck when it's stalled, it's not one that's easy to start. They have a push starter. But I've never had military service. I'm not sure I would have known that, except when I was, driven out of the stadium that day by the guy who was driving. I would have maybe seen him start it and figured out that was the way to do it. But the fact that I knew how to start one after it had been flooded was what saved me. But anyway, I'm sorry, I got away from Rusty. Let's talk about something that's current and relevant.
Well, let me just ask you, Bob. So Rusty was, I know, one half of the global tag team champions with Jumbo Beretta, and they had a feud with the Malenko boys, Joe and Dean, who were managed by their father, the, of course, legendary Boris Malenko, on the global sets. And I think that might be the first time I ever had any interaction with you and Rusty, is when we went to the global tapings in Pompano at that sort of like a warehouse building. And one of the things I remembered is that Rusty was introduced as being from Denton County. And of course, Denton County was where the Von Erich boys were always introduced from. So I jokingly started referring to him as Dusty Von Erich. And when we come to the ring, because Barry, I don't know if you know this, when I go to wrestling matches, I like to heckle. So me and my boys Flaherty and some other guys, we'd go, and so we started calling him Dusty Von Erich, and he kind of started breaking character because he would laugh. And so after the matches, we got to meet Rusty, and we started talking to him. And then we would show up at the independent shows. I mean, it could be a Foreign Legion hall, it could be a high school gym or stadium or whatever. And Rusty was always so gracious to us. And it got to the point where we knew him so well and he knew our faces so well that we would kind of jokingly say to him, and I'm sure this is something that you can't even fathom back in the day when you were wrestling for Eddie Graham doing something like this, Bob. But we would go up to Dusty we'd go up to Rusty and we'd say, Rusty, what's it looking like tonight? How many bumps? Because he was getting kind of late in his career, and he'd sit there and he kind of scratch his chin. He goes, I'm thinking maybe 3 bumps tonight, guys. That's all I'm taking. And we were sitting ringside, and like he'd go up for a hip toss or something like that from his opponent, and he'd hit the mat and he'd look through the ropes at me and my buddies and he'd go, that's one. And so we knew he had 2 bumps left in the match. And, he was just always such a character and so much fun to be around. And again, one of these common denominators. He was a guy that absolutely loved the business. He started as a fan. And, you ask yourself, why does someone want to, who's, like you said, a single father raising a son, what is it the wrestling business is going to offer him? He's never going to be a star on the WWE or in WCW, but it's a guy that just loved the business, loved going out to those shows, loved interacting, with the fans. We used to call him, my friends and I, we used to call him the John Wayne of professional wrestling, because he was always coming out there, he'd have the boots on, and when he was playing the kick-ass baby face, on a local level, and he would, go in there, and it was just always such a good time, and it was always so much fun to goof around with, before and after the matches, and just a really solid guy, Barry.
He really was too. And one of the things I liked about Rusty was I've been doing that CWF deal for, some 15, 20 years at this point. And Rusty would message me all the time, and he would go, I was there in attendance the night that Dory Funk Jr. defended the world title against Eduardo Perez in 1969. And he would tell me these memories. And what was so cool about it was he was so detailed in what he remembered of something that occurred 50 years ago, but he was so passionate about it. You know, a lot of those memories, which we've talked about, a lot of these memories that are ingrained in your brain come from your childhood. You know, I can't tell you what I did yesterday, but I can clearly go through all these details of what occurred in my life 40 years ago when I was a young guy. And Rusty kind of fell into that, but he loved reliving growing up in Miami, being able to go see professional wrestling. That was such a big thing to him. What a loss. You know, we talk about professional wrestling, and I referred to Rusty the other day as Mr. South Florida when it comes to professional wrestling, because he was such a supporter of everyone. It didn't matter if you were in Gangrel's group or you were working, you know, Pablo Marquez or whoever it is. Rusty was there to support because he loved professional wrestling and he wanted to see it succeed. So this is a really, really huge loss for us on a lot of different levels. Sadly, you know, I think so many people only know Rusty as a guy that was doing jobs. You know, Rusty, especially in the WWE, which was maybe his highest profile position, in the sense that, you know, he was in the 80s in the WWE doing jobs for people, you know, but at the same time, there's so much more to this guy. I don't think South Florida independent professional wrestling would exist the way that we currently know it and have known it over the last 2 decades if Rusty wasn't a part of it, Bob.
Well, I agree. And, you know, it's a couple things. The fact that he had that, he'd been, you know, what they called outlaw. And, you know, the fact that the boys themselves would say that, they showed that they were, you know, almost like chattel to the promoters. I know when we went opposition in Knoxville that, you know, the guys that would come up there to work against us, shows against us, wouldn't even talk to us. We were, you know, we were all in the same business. They were afraid to be seen even talking to us because that would be like they were being disloyal to the promotion. They were worried they would get fired. And that's how much control the promoters had. So I only tell that sad side of things because the business completely changed now. But that Rusty was kind of a free spirit, and that he could, you know, because he didn't have allegiance. He hadn't done like Bret Hart and worked for 14 straight years for the WWE. You know, he could go. He could be every man. He could be with and because he loved the business, and that was the way to be in it, to where you could love it. And the idea of staying in one place and letting the business come to you and not working every night, oh my God! I mean, that's just that's heaven. We got, you know, when you break in, you break into something the way that it's constructed when you break in. And I was on the road era where you were on the road every day, sometimes 7 days a week. And that was just it. If you're going to do it, that's what you did. Either that you had to do it all or you couldn't do it at all. And so the fact that he had that kind of freedom is nice to know, and also the guts too. Red told a story about a guy named Gil Montero booking Rusty and 4 or 5 other guys up in New York. And I guess he told Red's version was that Montero told Rusty that, they're going to use you and everything. And his first match was against Andre. And Rusty was green. And so he thought, well, oh my God, they are going to really push me. Oh, I'm going to beat Andre? Oh my God. and of course, Andre beat him. Red said, Andre like burped on him or something and beat him in 15 seconds. And then, so he thought, well, okay, they were just checking my attitude to see what kind of attitude I had, you know, about doing a job. His second match was against Hulk Hogan. So, but Montero sold him a bill of goods. But what we didn't realize was that even with that, I mean, Mike Jackson, you guys remember Mike, right?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Sure.
Well, Mike did jobs for Championship Wrestling for, I don't know how, maybe 10, 15 years, a long time. But he made a celebrity out of himself, and I don't know if they might have had Mike go over, have him win a match along the line just to give him some credibility, or maybe out of gratitude or whatever. But he got beat all the time. But you know what? It made a celebrity out of him. He was in the big leagues. He was in the ring with guys like, the guy that went on to be the Undertaker and monsters. Got great big guys, and he was in that league, even though he was getting beat. Well, he started his own promotion and ran shows with them as one of the stars, and did well off that.
Let's not forget, Bob, that Mike Jackson was the Alabama junior heavyweight champion, my friend. So we can't think the longest reigning. And it remains to this day, I think, as the Alabama junior heavyweight champ.
It's actually 53 years and counting in Alabama. So yes, absolutely, yes.
He won the title in 5.
He won from Abraham Lincoln. He won the title.
That explains it all. Well, I have to give him credit for never defending his title on national television.
Right, smart.
Against Andre.
Yeah. Well, if I'd been wrestling against him for the Alabama Junior Heavyweight Championship, I don't say I carried him, but I went about 8 minutes with him, which it's not easy to do with a guy that you outweigh by 100 pounds. And you're an Olympian and all this. You've had 8 or 9 big title belts on your, over the years, and you're working with a guy who basically, is it's getting beat all the time. To go 8 minutes with him.
Bob, we had a match that was up as one of the candidates for match of the week a few weeks back. That was a match with Andre and Harley Race from Houston in 1978. And the match went like 25 minutes. Can you imagine the shape Harley must have been in to go 25 minutes with Andre in his prime?
Well, I'm not a bit surprised if you told me it was Andre and say Hogan or Andre and almost anybody. Harley had a depth to it, and it was a shooter because Harley was a shooter. Harley was a killer. I'm not saying he was a murderer, but he was a potential murderer. He grew up tough. He was on his own at a very young age, and that guy had a steel backbone. And you didn't want to mess with it. He could be your best friend, but he would be the very worst enemy you could have. And when he looked at you, when he squinted that eye and looked at you, I saw him chill guys. I saw him chill Eddie Graham. They were having not a fight, but they were having a dispute. Harley was the booker. Eddie came in and was going to do his, the God drops in to, lay down a pronouncement. And they went against something Harley had planned on doing. Harley just cocked his head and looked at him and said, well, let me think about that one, Eddie. And went back to what he was doing. Eddie just left. So, he was, I had the utmost respect for the guy. He lived a hard life, and his latter years were kind of sad, what he had to do to support himself. But I'm telling you, his prime, I'm not surprised at all that he could go, Andre could work. And if he wanted to work with you, you could have a great match. Bobby Orton and I, it was me and Bobby and I were working against Andre and the referee, the old timer referee, and
Sonny Myers. Sonny
Myers. Yeah, we tied Sonny up in the ropes or something, or we got rid of him somehow. And this was in Tallahassee. It wasn't a big. A couple thousand, 1,500 people, maybe. I don't remember. It wasn't an enormous crowd. It was a small venue there. But Andre worked with us. He's standing on the floor. We tie his arms between the top and the second rope with him standing on the floor. You could tie him in now. So Bobby and I we've got him tied in the middle of between two posts, and Bobby's on one side, I'm on the other, and we're taking turns running down the apron and kicking him in the head. And with that big bushy head of hair, he never made contact, but then he lit flash or his ear or anything. But I had that big afro-looking thing. But he would sell it. We almost had a riot. People coming to save Andre the Giant. We had people come and approaching the chair, the ring with chairs in their hands. So we had to say, Andre, quit selling. Here you get Andre the Giant selling for you. You have to tell him, hey man, cut it out. You trying to get us killed?
Yeah. Just to clarify, Bob, when I was talking about Harley having the match with Andre that went that long, you were talking about Mike Jackson and how hard it was for you as a man that's bigger than Mike to have a long match with him. That was my point. It wasn't that Andre was going to have a bad match. It was just because he was so large, what it took for Harley, from a stamina point of view, to stay in the ring with Andre and have a really good match with Andre that went like 25 minutes. Just shows the incredible stamina that Harley had.
Oh yeah. Well, Harley would use every tactic, ducking and dodging and getting Andre, using a chair. Who knows, a gimmick, maybe your breast knocks, whatever. And again, walking and talking. And he might have done something that looked like he hurt Andre bad enough. Maybe had him down, wrapped his leg around the pole to where he's on the outside. He wraps his leg, and Andre's laying on the inside, and you take the leg and wrap it around the pole. It looked like it'd break your leg. You could if you were really trying to. And then going into the ring and getting a hold on him and keeping him down for a while. Andre could work. If he wanted to work with you, I saw a match with him and Garvin where he was down on one knee and Ronnie was pounding on him with a chair. And you could see people starting to get ready to climb in the ring. Well, Andre and Ronnie both were, had French in their background or in their lineage and both spoke the language. So Andre wanted to work with Ronnie, and Andre liked me and Bobby. We didn't need to kiss his ring or anything, but we liked us. We liked him. He's a good guy. I liked him. He and I had we had Baghdad in common, and so I got an afternoon one day in Freeport. It was raining, and the guy who had bought the show, nobody showed up because it was raining. He paid, I think, $3,000 for a show. If we weren't able to get the show started by a certain time, he was going to be able to cancel and not have to pay the $3,000. So Andre and I were waiting. Eddie wanted to start the show. Andre was the main event, of course, but he wanted to start the show. I was his manager for some reason. I can't remember why, but anyway, we were waiting for the rain to stop. We were in this kind of open air place where we could see the ring, and we talked. I had the privilege of maybe 15, 20 minutes, just me and him, nobody else around, and we talked about Baghdad, and what it was like over there, and so that was a privilege. But again, we keep getting away from Rusty. What's in right?
No, let me, and just as we begin to kind of close out this segment, I did want to mention a couple of things. You mentioned that Rusty had been on the show where he worked with Andre. Then he had a match with Dusty, and it was a very he had a match with Hogan, and I think it was a pretty famous match because I recall reading in the Observer that as Vince is calling the match between Hogan and Rusty, he refers to Rusty as Big Fat Dusty, which of course that was in the middle of the huge war between Crockett and Vince. And so it was a little subtle shot at Dusty Rhodes. And that's something that I always remember when I associate it with Rusty Brooks, that Vince had sort of taken a shot at Dusty Rhodes through Rusty Brooks, which I thought was kind of funny. So I also wanted to mention, a couple besides Dave Heath, Gangrel. I believe that Rusty may have been involved in the training of MVP, Antonio Banks, who was in the WWE for a while, Barry. And he also, if he didn't train him, he had an influence on a lot of the younger guys. I know Bob Cook posted a very thoughtful comments on the CAC website regarding Rusty and his death. And I did want to mention that a friend of our shows, and that's Brian Brock, who's one part of the Dirty Blondes, posted a very poignant comment to Rusty that I wanted to read. And we thank Brian for this. He said, "I met Rusty Brooks when I was 18 after I first started wrestling. He was always so kind and quick to share a word of encouragement. He had the sweetest way of telling you when you sucked. Never could the phrase heart of gold be more applicable. One conversation that will always stick out to me is when Rusty told me to never forget who was there early on and to never forget where I came from. I'll miss seeing him around, and there's now a void in Florida wrestling that can't be filled. Rest easy, Rusty. Thank you for all the love you passed our way." And we thank Brian Brock for that very thoughtful comment on Rusty. So just to close out the segment, Bob, Rusty Brooks, again, a South Florida legend and icon to the independent wrestling scene, and influenced so many careers of young wrestlers in that area.
Yeah, he was. He was a stand-up guy. His character demonstrated by taking care of his son and his helpful attitude. Brad said there's many, many people, men and women, who never would have ever had a chance to take even one bump if it had been for Rusty. And that he did everything he could to help people get started. He tried to book them. He did everything he could to help. And that's not common in our business.
Yeah.
It's not, most wrestlers are, you think of your own career and you have a tendency to be selfish. And the fact that he was such a good person. And I want to thank, Brian was the name of the man who wrote that tribute?
Yes, Brian Brock, yes.
I don't know if I know him very well, if I've been gone from the scene for so long. But my compliments. Those words are very eloquent and obviously deeply felt, and I think they're very accurate.
Yes.
Rusty is going to be missed.
Yeah, and before I forget, so I don't get an angry phone call, I will say that Rusty also played a part in the training of my friend Tom the Punisher Nash, who I spoke to the other day when I found out Rusty had died, and Tom wanted to send along his thoughts to Rusty's family also. So, Bob, hey, man, we really appreciate you coming and joining us here on this segment. Again, as Barry said, it's unfortunate when we speak, and it's usually the occasion of someone from your past that's passed away on us, and so we, as we do here, Barry, on Breaking Kayfabe with Bowdren Barry, we raise an adult beverage to the memory of Kurt Koski, Rusty Brooks.
Here.
Barry, as we begin to do the old go home, my friend, I want to make one last special announcement before we do the go home. I spoke to Barry about this before. Lou, could you join us, my friend?
Lou.
I have a quick question for you, unannounced. So Lou's going to have to think about this one on the cuff. Lou, if I was to ask you, right off the top of your head, tell me 3 movies that when I say, Lou, what's the funniest movie you've ever seen? Give me 3 movies that pop into your head right off the top of your head.
The Blues Brothers.
Okay, that's a good one.
Animal House.
That's a good one.
And Blazing Saddles.
I was going to say a Belushi theme was running through that, but Blazing Saddles, of course, one of the odds-on favorites. So here's what we're going to do. I talked about this with Barry. I think this is going to be interesting. We're going to do this in the Facebook group Breaking Kayfabe with Bowdren Barry. This is not going to be a quick thing. This is going to take months and months to unwind. Both of you are familiar, if you're not huge college basketball fans on the level of John Hitchcock and Bruce Mitchell, you're familiar with the college basketball tournament, the tournament of 64 teams that happens at the end of each March Madness, I believe they call it.
They do? Absolutely.
Yes, Lou, you're familiar with that?
Slightly, yes.
Anyway, so what we're going to do here is I came up with this idea. What is the funniest movie of all times? Now, a lot of times people will say, upon reflection, one of the films that Lou mentioned right there, Blazing Saddles is one that I think it's fair to say always gets a lot of love. Barry, would you say that's fair?
Oh, and deservedly so, yeah.
Of course. So what we're going to do, much like the brackets for the college basketball tournament, though, we're going to be doing a blind draw for the funniest movies of all times post 1970. Quite frankly, Barry, not going to put the boots to our group, but maybe there's only a few people that are big into those funny movies from the 30s. But so we're going to do post 1970. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're going to do is the person that I find the most trustworthy in my whole life, that would be Mrs. Bowdren. is going to, from a bowl, randomly on a, let's say, daily or every other day, we're going to pick out 2 movies, and we're going to post a poll. We know how painful that can be on our page to see what's the winner. So, Lou, you pointed out that you liked Animal House and the Blues Brothers. What happens if these 2 movies, which, by the way, should be at any point a contender for the funniest movie of all time, what happens if they meet in the first or second round and you have to choose between Animal House or the Blues Brothers? That means one of those movies is advancing, I almost said teams, and one of those films, boom, out of the tournament for good to never be remembered again. We're going to come out with the Breaking Kayfabe with Bowdren Barry and Sweet Lou funniest movie of all time tournament. It's going to start this week. Can you hear the anticipation, Barry?
This is very exciting, too. And when you called me, I think I was able to rattle off 2 or 3 films right away, the ones that always make me laugh. And then as I started to think about this question at night, it was 3 a.m. I'm staring at the ceiling. All of a sudden, I've got a list of like 40 movies. So this will be great. Yeah, this will be great. And I like the fact that this is not going to be done overnight. We're going to see this play out over the next few months. Quick question, though, Jeff. Will you be videotaping Mrs. Bowdren for security purposes?
Security purposes, Mrs. Bowdren will be wearing something skimpy on the initial draw.
There you go.
I'm sure I can.
Mrs. Bowdren.
It is Valentine's Day after all. And so anyway, so we will, let's just say the initial draw. You will see the bowl with, because I've written down all the names of the movies. And by the way, in case somebody asked, I'm sure there is someone out there that thinks they have a movie that they think is absolutely freaking hilarious, that I just think is a big rolling turd. So these are the movies that I came up with. By the way, the ones that you guys mentioned are all on the list. So if there's one that you think, oh my God, I can't believe he didn't mention this movie from 1971 from Afghanistan, it was hilarious. No, I'm sorry. It's not going to be in the damn tournament, okay? And you're just going to have to live with that. So
the Turkish Spider-Man did not make the list.
That was close. That's
a
close.
Funny movie, though. That's a funny movie.
That's the breakout star in that movie. I'll never forget him. So anyway, look for that on the pages when trying to encourage the traffic on the Facebook page there, Bear. On the pages of Breaking Kayfabe with Bowdren and Barry, the funniest movie of all time tournament will begin afresh this week, maybe even the day that this Peabody Award-winning podcast drops. What do you think about that, Barry and Lou?
That's exciting.
Yes. Breathless anticipation is the key word of the day. So
those are 2 words.
Well, okay. Thank you for reminding me of that. That being said, Mr. Smart Aleck, I will remind all of you at the behest of Lou Kipilman that Breaking Kayfabe is a production of the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network. By the way, as we're recording the show, Barry, last-minute reminder before we go home.
Okay.
A new episode of Breaking Kayfabe with Bowdren Barry has come up on the YouTube channel page of the Arcadian Vanguard YouTube channel. It is the one from about 5 episodes ago where we discussed the Tommy Dreamer Raven match. So I would encourage each of you to go to the Arcadian YouTube page and search out that Breaking Kayfabe with Bowdren and Barry special episode with the ECW angle, slant, et cetera, et cetera. And until next week, get ready for that movie tournament. Yeah.